Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us for the Proper and Breezeway Safety and Insurance webinar. My name is Justin Broden. I'm the marketing manager for Proper Insurance. We have a great webinar. I know everyone's eager to dive into insurance and safety here, so let me go ahead and do some introductions. So briefly, we have Darren Pettyjohn, who will be speaking. Darren is the co-founder of Proper Insurance, followed by Justin Ford. He is the director of certification and programs at Breezeway. So these guys are the utmost experts when it comes to insurance for short-term rentals and for safety in short-term rental homes. So they've got a lot to say, a lot to learn from them. We're excited to see what we can get into there. So at the end of the session, what we're going to do, we're going to go into a Q&A. Throughout the webinar, feel free to use the comment section, submit any questions you have. We'll do our best to kind of keep up on answering questions, but we really want to hear from you guys at the end and bring kind of a public forum. So at that time, Nicholas Massey, who's the national sales manager for Proper Insurance, he'll jump in and we'll get some questions answered. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Darren, and Darren will do an introduction for us.
Right at about 100 attendees, so thank you to everyone to take an hour of their time to come check out the insurance and safety webinar. We're really, really excited. I'm a guy that likes to keep it simple. Quick rule of 3. Why is everybody here? First and foremost, for those of you who don't really know Proper and Breezeway, it's a great opportunity for you to really get a better understanding of our companies, what we do. The second and most important thing is for everyone to understand the new partnership between Proper and Breezeway. And it's a safety certification program that the world's foremost safety expert, Justin Ford, has put together with Breezeway and partnered with Proper Insurance. So bear with me for 20 minutes while I get through my section. I promise Justin will be coming up in 20 minutes, but we're really, really excited about it. And then third, as Broden had mentioned, we're going to do a Q&A session at the end. And this is really an opportunity for everybody to ask questions directly to experts, the tough questions that you really can't get answered anywhere else. But just to lighten the mood, I always like to lighten the mood on things like this. That number one, you're reading, get to know Proper and Breezeway. The more you know, the more you're worth. Find the 20%. And the easiest way to explain this is an example. I'm 41 years old now. When I was 18, my father was driving me to the airport to send me away for college. And my dad's a fairly conservative guy, really kind of a hard A, if you will. And I looked at my dad. It was about 7 in the morning, about a 15-minute ride to the airport. I grew up in Alaska. And I asked my dad, I said, Dad, is there anything you want to, words of wisdom for your son here going to college? And he looked at me and he said, Darren, I do have some words of wisdom. Shut the F up. And that was the extent of our conversation on the way to the airport. Now, granted, like a lot of 18-year-olds, I was butting heads with my dad a little bit at the time. Now we're best friends, of course, 25 years later. But I tried to figure out what he was telling me, shut the F up. And I think I figured it out. It's a two-part scenario. Part one is a lot of people go around telling everybody everything they know, and they don't listen. So if you just sit back and listen every once in a while, you might learn something. So that was the first piece of what my father was trying to explain to me as I went to college. And the second piece was 80% of what you read or people tell you, we all know, is basically BS. So it's your job to dig through the BS, and to find that 20%. So trying to lighten the mood here a little bit. We've got some great information for you. It's your job to find the 20%, learn something, and get your takeaway. So real quick on getting to know Proper Insurance. For those of you who don't know what we do, we founded the company in 2014, and we really had one goal, and that was to create the most comprehensive vacation rental insurance policy for the market. And it was not exactly easy to do. If you look on your screen there, you're going to see you really only have 3 options: homeowners insurance, landlord insurance, and commercial insurance. So we had to combine all 3 of these to create a unique policy. So I'm proud to say myself and my staff and everyone involved in this industry, in 5 years, we have written over 40,000 insurance policies. We're going to get into some claims here, some liability claims, some really cool stuff, give you guys an insight into what we deal with on a day-to-day basis before we hand it over for the safety inspection part with Justin. And that is a true statement, all 50 states. It took us about a year, but eventually we got North Dakota. And for those of you who do not know, North Dakota is the pheasant hunting capital of the world. There's some great vacation rentals there. So for the bird hunters on here, book a vacation rental in North Dakota and go pheasant hunting. So that is a legitimate statement, all 50 states. So let's focus on this slide just for a minute, though. This really applies to what's going on with COVID right now. Occupancy type. So again, how do we properly insure a vacation rental? It's not that easy to do. So we have commercial, personal, tenant, and unoccupied. So the commercial aspect is pretty easy. You're running a business. When your property is being short-term rented, it's a business activity. You're competing with Hilton, any other hotel, it's a business, and you need business insurance for your short-term rental. So that's that piece. The other piece is personal use. So most of these vacation rentals across the US have some time periods of personal use. So the owner may book the property for a week or 2 or 3 in the summer, enjoy it with his family. That's actually considered personal use of the property. That's really homeowners insurance. The next piece is tenant occupied. So this is really relevant right now because we're starting to hear the word midterm rental, right? You're an executive at Facebook and you're now allowed to work remote and you're going to book a vacation home for 3 or 6 months and stay there. That's really defined as tenant occupied. It's a place where that person now resides. That's really landlord insurance. And then the final piece is vacancy. Most of these short-term rental properties across the US have periods of vacancy, maybe during the off season, maybe now during COVID. Obviously, there's been a lot of cancellations. So that's a real issue with insurance because nobody's there to shut off the water. And insurance companies do not like vacant properties. So proper, very unique. We cover all 4 occupancies with building, contents, income, and liability. So that's the strength of our product and why we've been able to get to over 40,000 policies written. I'll rip through this slide pretty quick here. Basically, again, for people who don't know us, we do vacation rentals, condos, townhouses, cabins, apartments. One thing that's unique, though, is we do insure the rental arbitrage or the re-rent model. A lot of people long-term rent properties now to turn around and short-term rent them. Important to understand that our policy replaces the current coverage you have. So I'm sure we have property managers on here, individual property owners. For people who own a vacation rental, we would compete against Allstate, Nationwide, USAA, etc. You would buy proper and then cancel your homeowners. And then the last one here, just a quick bullet point on what it is. It's a commercial package policy, building contents, income, liability, and then a lot of bells and whistles. Bed bug coverage, backups of sewers and drains, and stuff like that. So I'm going to turn the video off here real quick. Just a few claims this May. This just gives you a little insight into what we deal with. So hopefully nobody ever goes through this, but this was an insured of ours who had obviously a short-term rental gone bad. And there was a shooting at a party. And we're dealing here now with property damage, obviously, windows and garage doors, but also potential liability to come back on the vacation rental owner. Again, these are claims this May. This one here is a gas grill, a propane tank that exploded. And this is an open claim right now, but the investigation basically shows that the propane tank was left on and the post-day inspection turned it on and the propane tank exploded. So you can see the massive amount of damage that happened from that. And then this third one was actually last weekend. So if we look at this cute property here in Colorado Springs with a nice backyard, unfortunately, the renters had a fire in the fire pit and they did not completely extinguish the fire and it ended up burning down our insured's property. So real quick, it's just an example for you guys to give you an insight into really what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So more property managers recommend proper. The reason I put this slide in here is, first off, I have to thank all the property managers across the country that recommend our insurance. We could not have gotten to over 40,000 policies without your help. We're very grateful for that. But we do make it somewhat easy for property managers to recommend us. So the first is, we're just a great referral. We have great customer service and a comprehensive product. And so our messaging has always been, we just want a spot on your referral list. You may recommend a local agent or someone else. We just want to earn the business and have a spot on your referral list. The second piece, which we'll get into in a second, on the liability claims section, which is really why we're here, and the safety inspection partnership, is you're automatically added as additionally insured with liability. So that's a really nice piece of our policy. And then the third one, real quick, is property managers commission income. So very, very cool endorsement. We are actually the only company in the United States that has this endorsement. So if we look at that fire damage on the gal's property in Colorado Springs this weekend, not only does the owner of the property get a business income check because they have to rebuild the property, but we actually cut a check to the property manager as well. We have some case studies on our website regarding it. It's very, very cool and an incentive for property managers to recommend us. So this one is one I just threw in here, this slide, because I want to address this real quick. There's obviously a lot of talk about COVID and property and liability insurance. So let's read the first question here. Does proper or other insurance carriers cover lost business income due to COVID-19 mandatory shutdowns? The unfortunate news on this is the answer is no. And that includes proper insurance and any other carrier regarding a business. So think of coffee shops, restaurants, bars, vacation rentals that were all shut down due to COVID. There is no insurance claim to file, unfortunately. And the reason being is there's no direct physical loss to property. So in order to file an insurance claim, there has to be direct physical loss to property. A fire, broken water pipes, vandalism, theft, etc., etc. And so what's happening across the country is owners of businesses are complaining, saying, no, COVID is a direct physical loss. There could potentially be the virus on my couches and in my bathroom and so on. And it just doesn't fly, unfortunately. And for those of you who are digging deep on this, there is some legislation that's been proposed in states across the country to retroactively force insurance companies like Proper and State Farm and Allstate to pay these business insurance claims for the losses due to the COVID shutdown. I can tell you we follow this closely, and they won't get passed into law because essentially it would bankrupt the insurance industry, and it's just not something that we charge a premium for. So for those of you who didn't know already, it's just one of those things that's not covered under insurance. The second piece, can a guest sue me for COVID-19, and is there liability coverage? Great question, big elephant in the room. And the first part of the answer is yes, you can absolutely get sued for anything. The next segment of my 10 minutes is going to be going into some actual liability claims, and you're going to see owners, or excuse me, renters or anyone can sue you for about anything. But the problem with the lawsuit against you, though, is how can they prove that they obtained COVID from your property? Maybe they flew to your city. Maybe they stopped at a gas station. Maybe they went to a restaurant. So it's really a frivolous lawsuit that is going to be very hard to prove. But technically, yes, someone could sue you for that. And unfortunately, the answer is no again on liability coverage. And the reason being is all the major carriers, including Lloyd's of London and Proper Insurance, have a virus liability exclusion. It's just one of those things that's not built into the premium. We don't charge for it. And it's been in there forever for pandemics just like this, where a wave of litigation could come regarding a virus, and it essentially is just something that's not covered under insurance. So Maybe we'll get some questions on that in the Q&A section, but that's straight from the source, and that's the reality of what's going on with COVID. We've seen every insurance claim. Wanted to touch base real quick on property claims. This is not the highlight of the program here. We're going to get into the liability in a second, but number one is water damage. It's always been the number one claim. So we're talking ice makers, broken water pipes, things of that sort. The second one is wind and hail, trees fall, hail damage to roofs, hurricanes, etc. The third piece is fire, as we saw in the fire example claim. And then number four is everything else, vandalism, theft, things of that nature. But here's where we really want to focus, is the liability, and why I'm so excited about the partnership with Justin and Breezeway, because a lot of these liability claims could be prevented if owners and managers really accept this safety program. But number one is slip and fall. It's always been the number one liability claim and really always will be. And number two is everything else. So let's look at this claim. This is a great example. So if we look at these photos, and this is a real claim here at Proper Insurance, nothing really jumps out. If we look towards the bottom, we're going to see that this was a $375,000 settlement. And the reason being is the railing. So if we look at this picture, we're going to see now there's a railing, and in this picture, there is no railing. So I'm just going to jump in here real quick and let everybody know, everyone on this webinar, you're competing against Hilton and Marriott. And Hilton and Marriott have hand railings at their properties. So it's so important to take this liability seriously, because if an example like this happens, thank heavens the person wasn't seriously injured, fairly significant injury, $375,000 lawsuit. And this could have been prevented very easily through the safety certification program. This one involves property managers. That's why I threw this in here. So if we look at this picture on the left, we're going to see there's ice buildup. There's obviously some spring melt, and there's ice. Someone fell, got seriously injured, and sued the property manager. So this one is really, really important, because it wasn't the owner of the property that was sued, it was the manager. So the manager contacted the owner contacted Proper because they have our insurance. The managers added as additionally insured on the policy. We represent both parties. So if we look down here at the bottom right, it looks like this ended up settling for $299,000. The next one here is a classic example of waivers don't necessarily save you. One of the things we hear a lot in the industry is, I have a waiver in my rental agreement for use of the hot tub or the bicycles or the rope swing, and so nobody can sue me because they've waived their liability. The answer is you can get sued for anything. We already talked about that. So if we look here, we've got a rope swing, we've got a ride at your own risk sign, and then if we go to the next one, here is the injured party on the rope swing, and they fell and got injured, and it ended up settling for $120,000. So this is another great example of when you go through this commitment to safety certification with Breezeway, these types of items are going to be reviewed at your vacation rental. So let's be honest, can we charge more because we have a rope swing at our vacation rental? Is it a searchable item on VRBO and Airbnb? And the answer is no. People are not booking this property because of the rope swing, yet it ended up costing $120,000. So things like this, they need to be evaluated and potentially removed from the vacation rental. Another great example. I know Justin loves this one. Chair. Simply a loose screw on a chair where somebody fell out of the chair and ended up suing the owner of the property. If we look down at the bottom right, payments to date, $61,000 claim. But what if that would have been a child who had brain damage and there was $1 million or $2 million lawsuit? Part of the safety inspection is to look at the furniture in your property. at least a couple times a year as part of your post-stay inspection, and make sure the screws are tight and the furniture is acceptable, because this is a disaster waiting to happen. It's, again, a real claim at proper insurance, $60,000. This is a fun one. So let's look at this picture. This is the ambulance chaser example. Well, if we look here, looks good to me. There's a railing on the left, there's a railing down here. What's the problem? Well, somebody fell, got injured, and ended up suing the owner. So again, I hate to use the word ambulance chaser, but that's what this is. The defendant claimed that there was too much lacquer or stain on the stairs. They slipped, they fell, they got injured. The part that I'm proud to say here is if we look down here, payments to date, there's only $6,000 that has been paid, and that's to attorney's fees because we didn't settle this claim. Part of the reason you buy insurance as well is for legal defense. So will we settle this claim for 10 grand or 20 grand? Potentially. But will we take this to court and fight it and say, no, we've done a friction test. Our client is not negligent. This is an ambulance chaser case, potentially. So another real good reason to have good liability insurance, though. Now, here's the last one. Let's take a good look at this. This is a tree that fell onto one of our insured's homes. Now, when you first look at it, you think of property damage. And there is property damage, 100%. There's 81,000 incurred, so 70,000 paid to date. But the issue with this, most people don't understand, you can be held liable for bodily injury and property damage, okay? So the way this plays out is we respond, this is our insured's home, we rebuild it, we write them a check for $80,000. But then after that, we subrogate and we sue the neighbor, because the tree came from the neighbor's home and damaged our client's property. So they're liable for it. So again, as part of this, which I'm so excited about, the safety certification program, is to look at the exterior of your property. Do you have trees that are overhanging on patios? Do you have trees that could potentially damage your neighbor's property, et cetera, et cetera? So it's really important to understand liability insurance you could be found liable for is bodily injury and property damage. So that's some really, really cool stuff that we got into there. I'm going to kick it over to my new best friend, Justin Ford, and he's going to talk about how we became friends and how all this started. So I'm going to kick it over to Justin.
Thanks, Darren. I'm happy to be here. It's great to see several hundred people here joining us today. I actually see we got some celebrities on here. We've got Annette and Sarah from the Thanks for Visiting podcast. If none of you have ever listened to the Thanks for Visiting podcast, Darren and I have both been guests on that. It's a great opportunity. So thank you everyone for being here today. And it has been really exciting. Darren and I both presented to the nation's mayors last summer in Austin, Texas, and kind of locked in the partnership that we've built between Breezeway and Proper today, and it's really exciting to be a part of all that. I'm going to turn myself off and cover some information here that I think I really truly believe some of what I'm going to talk about here in the next 10 minutes or so can save lives and prevent injuries in the short-term rental properties that you work with. And as Darren talked about with that 20%, I hope there's just one key thing here that you learned today that will help you do that. So what's Breezeway? Was founded just a few years ago, very similar to Proper Insurance, by FlipKey founder Jeremy Gall, and it was to address property care and operations at rental property. The software allows for cleaning management, inspection operations, and maintenance operations to occur at vacation rental properties. And we also do some work with inns, some hotels, and other type of things as well. So it's a very the software allows us to be flexible in what we want to do, and it's pretty exciting to see the growth. We're growing tremendously and haven't slowed down even through the pandemic that's been occurring the past few months. Last year, Breezeway added the Dwell Safe certification programs and created the safety and certification program at Breezeway, which I led. And I had founded Dwell Safe, and Breezeway has purchased that. So Breezeway is now the world leader in safety certification programs. We currently provide safety certification support for over 40,000 rental properties, making us the largest support for safety in the world. So why are safety and certification programs so important? Why is this something that's being talked about now? Let's just take a look at this. I could cover the page. I could probably take hours showing all the news headlines. As of this year, short-term rentals are the most dangerous segment of the hospitality industry. And that may sound like a tough pill to swallow, but it also has a lot to do with our growth. We already know that more accidents happen in the home than anywhere else. Okay, according to the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, over 50% of injury-related accidents in the United States occur at home. Common sense says that if people spend time staying in an unfamiliar home or condo, like a short-term rental, they're much more prone to an accident. The most common accidents at short-term rentals are from trips and falls, as Darren talked about. But trees falling on rentals, pool drownings, grill fires, and carbon monoxide incidents top that list. You know, look at this accident here at the bottom center that happened in Idaho earlier this year. And that followed another high-profile carbon monoxide incident. You flipped on all the morning news programs, Today Show, ABC this morning, all that stuff last Thanksgiving, and you probably saw what happened to actress Anna Faris at Lake Tahoe. And, you know, these carbon monoxide incidents are ridiculous. They've got to stop. It's common sense now. We've got to have these in the short-term rentals. You know, many news outlets are even encouraging renters to bring their own CO detectors with them when they travel to a vacation rental. That'd be like a cruise ship saying, bring your own life jacket. We can't be that way in this industry anymore. We need to protect our renters. Almost every day, an accident in a short-term rental makes the news around the world. There was a shooting at a vacation rental where someone died yesterday in Nashville. The media doesn't always know that the property is a short-term rental, but I've done the research to learn which are and which aren't, and the numbers are staggering. All you have to do is Google short-term rental accident, vacation rental accident. I've got that typed in here. There's hundreds and hundreds of these guys that come up. Look for yourself. There's over 100 law firms now in the United States looking to represent renters against property owners for accidents that were totally preventable. They wouldn't be doing this if business was good. Let's take deck collapses at vacation rentals, for example. Darren didn't talk a lot about those, but those are a common claim and a common accident we're seeing out there. They've been grabbing headlines a lot recently. This big accident that happened in New Jersey last September really caught a lot of headlines. It was the leading news story on the NBC Nightly News last September on the day that it happened. It's a big accident. It happened during the New Jersey State firefighters gathering. And I want to emphasize this. This happened during a firefighter gathering. It injured over 22 people, mostly firefighters. And it occurred in a vacation rental. There it is right there, top right. That's live right now. It was on VRBO this morning. That property's still being advertised for rent. It's my understanding they've rebuilt the deck. And if you actually take a look at the recent Google Street View, you can see what they were doing to work on that property after the accident happened. But this is the same rental that Branchville, New Jersey Fire Chief John Fredo has rented for years for the state's annual fire convention that they have in Wildwood. 3 different fire companies were staying inside this property, 222 East Baker Street, Wildwood, New Jersey. They had a different company on each level. You had the engine staying in one, you had the ladder truck staying in one, you had the rescue pumper, all 3 levels. And yet none of them knew the deck wasn't safe. And this highlights 2 problems that we have in the US when it comes to rental safety and the government. Because single-family homes and less than 4 multi-unit residential buildings are mostly exempt from building code regulations, when it comes to safety requirements from government regulators, many short-term rental owners must address safety on their own. Or they got to be prepared for accidents that they're going to have to defend themselves. And you saw what those lawyer bills are like. Imagine if you weren't insured properly and you had to take on some of those coverages on your own. So right now, less than 1% of all short-term rentals in the United States are inspected for safety. Less than 1%. Where the municipal safety inspections do occur, They're typically done by the fire department, who are not trained in rental property safety. I know this. I was a firefighter for 15 years on a popular vacation rental destination. I was a training officer at my fire department. I was trained on how to operate fire trucks, and I was trained on how to put fires out. I was never trained how to look at safety issues in homes. The closest thing I ever came was passing out free smoke detectors and doing annual training on a fire extinguisher. So we know that less than 3% of all accidents at short-term rentals are fire-related. So why are firefighters doing the inspections? And here in Brattleboro, Vermont, and this is one of their firefighters pictured here, they started doing rental inspections last year. And like in Brattleboro, or I know in Nashville and Nashville, Tennessee, they do it as well. The firefighters check the rentals. They check fire extinguishers, wiring and junction boxes, smoke detectors, and emergency exits. Yeah, that's important stuff. But that's just not enough. That's not covering what needs to be done. And I believe it leads to a false sense of security that when a firefighter does a safety inspection of a rental and it passes, it must now be safe. 22 firefighters staying at that rental last September in Wildwood, New Jersey should put that idea to rest. None of them knew that that property wasn't safe when they went out and stayed on that deck. So the problem isn't firefighters, though. We need those guys. We need them to put out fires, and that's what they should be doing, not inspecting rentals. The problem isn't the code enforcement officers or the other inspectors that municipalities were trained to inspect rentals. The government knows what's not safe in homes. They have tons of organizations with websites that promote safety. You got the Consumer Product Safety Council, the CDC, the U.S. Fire Administration, even Smokey the Bear, just to name a few. And really what you get into is the problem is that it's impossible with the government's limited resources to inspect the millions of short-term rentals in the United States. So that means it falls on you, the property owner or the manager, to make sure everything is safe as it can be. And of course, I'm here to help. We're here to help. Breezeway is here to help. And how can we do that? We're going to help you get your property certified, and we're going to help get everything in shape so that your rental is safe. And I'm going to go so far as let you know the certified vacation rental program that we have here, we can cover enough of everything so that your property is safe enough that the only reason a renter is going to get hurt is if they didn't tie their shoes and tripped over their own shoelaces. We've investigated, as you've seen in a lot of the slides, we know where the accidents are happening. So while the smoke alarm is still the most important safety tool in your rental property, we dig in and guide you to the other 97% of safety items to prevent accidents. And it's less than $70 a year. Plus, as part of this program with proper insurance, you can get up to a 5% discount on your premium if you pass it. And we call it, again, the Commitment to Safety Certification. We're not saying that this property is absolutely 100% safe, because that can change by the minute. But we're highlighting the fact that you've made a commitment to safety, and it took you 15 minutes to do it, just to walk right through the property and do the inspection. There's a lot of different things that we're going to cover inside the inspection checklist we have, and it's as comprehensive or not as comprehensive as you want it to be. General building, we're going to get into really a lot of the things that a home inspector doesn't do. And if you're familiar with home inspections, they're looking at the core of the home, how it operates, wiring, plumbing, things like that, but they're not looking at the livability. They're not necessarily taking into account that the steps now don't have the right railing on it, and this property is being used as a rental. May have let it go by before it was a rental, but now it's a rental. On the inside, dryers, dryer vents, I can talk about those forever. I did a podcast on Thanks for Visiting recently where we talked about dryers and dryer safety for 40 minutes. That's how big that is. I just looked at a dryer vent that's had 7 fires in it. They're like tree rings, and you can see, and thank gosh, each time the fire has gone out. But it's because they're not changing and adapting to the type of dryer vents that we need today. And I keep seeing white vinyl dryer vents in rental properties. Those are outlawed. They're banned. You can't even buy them anymore. And yet we see those in so many houses across the country, and we see them leading to fires. We look at the patio, barbecue grills. Darren showed that one. There are so many grill fires at short-term rentals, and they're too close to the houses. And we've got some great ideas, and we'll help guide you into making sure that you can set up your grill to be safe. Pools, spas, hot tubs. Pool drownings are still the #1 cause of death accidentally for children under the age of 5. And unfortunately, a lot of those are catching headlines at short-term rentals. A lot of you are familiar with the U.S. Olympic gold medalist Bode Miller and what happened with his daughter who drowned in a vacation rental pool. And it wasn't even the pool at the rental he was staying in. It was the one next door. It didn't have the right fences and the protections in place. And there's a lot of things on the outside too. We talked about the rope swings before, docks and piers, kayaks, golf carts. There's so many different things, and we cover all of that just to get you into a place where you can do what you need to do to ensure that your rental is safe for your renters. So how do we do that? Really easy. We use the Breezeway software, the power of the Breezeway software. We use the app and our checklists that we've built so that you can go through the rental property to address all the safety features. When you purchase a certification, you get access to the Breezeway app. And if you like it, if you like using it just for the safety stuff, that's great. But if you want to get into doing cleaning maintenance, cleaning management, and other maintenance management of your rental, you can use the software for that as well. So, and yeah, by the way, this Craftsman rental down here in Nashville did not initially pass inspection. I should have shown an after photo, but yes, those are very glossy painted steps leading up there with no handrail, and there's no railing. There's a swing chair in the back that was on rusty iron bolts. We caught all that stuff, and this rental property is now a lot safer because of the certification program. When you jump in and purchase a certification program, we're going to guide you through everything to address everything to ensure your rental meets the safety guidelines you should. And monthly updates, we're going to let you know of things that are going on. Recalls from, there was a recall just 2 or 3 months ago for a aerosol deck stain that's a very popular product. I've even seen it now in 3 basements at vacation rental properties. It's been recalled. It could explode and catch on fire. We're watching all that type of stuff, and we're going to keep you alerted so that you can make sure the products in your short-term rental are safe. Guests want a safe rental. It was on CNN yesterday. You guys can take a look. I obviously had fun with it, but it was the headline. Safety is the new sexy word in travel, and it is. And unfortunately, the pandemic brought that forth, but I've been talking about it for years. Guests want a safe rental property. They assume it's a safe rental property. When I'm on an airline flight and I sit next to somebody and they ask me what I do and we get into the conversation, the #1 thing I always hear people say is, well, I just always thought the rentals were safe. You mean they're not? They don't know that we're not checking for these things before we've implemented these type of certification programs. So these are here now to make sure that that happens. And when you get your property certified, you can be proud about that. We've this is a property we just did an inspection on, looks like May 14th. This was out in Washington State. Those railings do now have wires that go around the deck. He just had it wide open. He's been renting this house for 7 or 8 years now, had no idea that he needed to make sure that those railings would prevent a child from falling off. And underneath the deck is where he was keeping the grill, which is a major fire hazard. Look over on the left side, he was offering kayaks, which was great, but he had never considered the idea that he needed to include life jackets and have some different training and check the kayaks between each rental. So huge opportunity there, and we were really proud to certify this among the many properties that we've certified recently. So been a lot of exciting things going on with this program, and like I said, we're supporting now about 40,000 properties within the Breezeway structure, and we're looking forward to certifying a lot more rentals so that we can protect everybody who has a short-term rental from being injured. And Justin, if I'm correct, the other Justin here with me from Proper Insurance, we're going to get into a little Q&A section here.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So we'll go ahead and open it up. Guys, if you want to submit your questions, we have a couple polls running. We'll comment on that. And then just use the chat section. Any questions you submit, we'll go ahead and pull them out and ask these guys. If Darren, if you want to hop back in here, maybe Nick as well. Cool. All right, fellas. So a couple questions. Let's see. So Scott L asks, how important are grab bars in showers and tubs in a vacation rental?
I'll jump on that one real quick. We know that over 20% of the renters staying in vacation rentals are over the age of 60. And certainly when you're working with hosting mature guests that are much more likely to fall, and I'm not picking on people that are over the age of 60, it's just a statistic that you're much more likely to fall as you mature in age. And so certainly anything that you can do to make sure that it's easy for the renters when they're taking a shower or going in the bath. You just don't know who's staying in your rental. I say this all the time. You never know who's staying there, and whatever you can do to address all of that will certainly make it easier for them.
To add to that, from the insurance side, at least the underwriting requirements with proper insurance for liability with those, we don't require the grab bars in the showers or any tubs. Definitely recommended. But if somebody were to slip and fall in your shower and get a lawsuit coming after you, you would have policy defense with us because we don't have exclusions around particular ADA compliance when it comes to bathroom amenities.
The thing is, with an evolving program, so for example, we used to not underwrite real heavy for bunk beds, but we've been doing this 5 years now. We had a few significant bunk bed claims, and so we do now. We make sure there's a railing on the top, and we've identified that. So, you know, this is a recorded thing here. 5 years from now, we may require those rails. We haven't seen a lot of claims. There isn't a specific exclusion in the coverage, but by all means, get ahead of the game.
Wow, we got a lot of questions coming in here, Nick. I'll let you call out a couple here.
We had another question that came in earlier that I had set aside about dangers in common areas. And to kind of hit that on a grand scope of things, you have dangers in common areas around your house, like, and Justin, you can chime in on this too, your rugs. You know, you can trip over the corner of a rug, so you want to look at sticky tapes and stuff like that to set down. In a condo association, you have things like workout equipment and spas and pools and things that you don't have control over. That's on the association. And so it just falls back more into making sure that you have the right type of insurance that protects you against things that you don't have control over. And the big benefit of using commercial liability insurance on your vacation rentals gives you that off-premises extension for coverage, especially for those items that you have no control over and could easily be tied into a lawsuit on. Pam Odell from the Georgia Association actually has one here for you, Justin Ford. I have 2 wraparound decks and a typical grass grill. Where's the best place to put it?
You know, this is a tough one we talk about a lot. U.S. Fire Administration is saying 3 feet away from a property, but International Building Code actually says 10 feet. And I've been seeing a lot of properties where this is a very reactive industry, and we see a lot of people not do anything until something happens. And I was in the Outer Banks last year. They've had some serious grill fires down there. They're now taking the grills and they're staking them into the ground out back, especially so the renters won't move them. So they'll drive a stake into the ground low enough so it's not a trip hazard. And then they're using a padlock and some chain from the hardware store wrapping around the grill just to keep it out there. But Nick, you and I know we've talked to some of your customers who they just don't like the idea of taking a grill out from under an overhang. They haven't had a fire, and they don't want the renters to have to grill out in the rain, and they're nervous about that. And you know that it's okay as long as you got a 9-foot overhang above you, because the flames can go much higher than that. I saw John Keevan on here. He's a good property manager with a big company out in Maui. We saw one of his condos where you could see the soot marks on the wall behind where the grill had been. They go up 9 feet. And so it's really important to get them off the deck if you can. And if you can't, get them at least 3 feet away from the structure. Yeah, it's definitely a one that we come across a lot in our underwriting process. And to kind of hit on that too, there's another question in here from Leanna about when Proper does an inspection, do they recommend Breezeway if there's an issue? So to kind of touch on that for everybody, when you're looking to do business with Proper Insurance, we underwrite via the online listings, and 99% of the things that may not qualify you for our coverage, we can address
via that online listing. And then as an addition to a commitment to safety, we do recommend and send information to every single policyholder on how to obtain the Breezeway certification and go through that process with Justin and his team. So, you know, we'll let you know if we need handrails, if you need a top railing on the bunk bed, waiver language, stuff like that from an insurance underwriting standpoint. But Justin comes in as well to address other certain items like fire extinguisher location and testing your smoke detectors and things of that nature.
Yeah, let me jump in here, guys, because there's quite a few questions about the warranty of a commitment to safety, and I've just read through there, and some people are concerned about if I have this badge on my vacation rental, am I opening myself up to more liability because I said the property was safe and now it's not, etc. And in developing the program, and Justin can speak to this as well, you're not safety certifying your property every time the property is rented. This is an annual certification, and it clearly states the date that the property was certified. So let's say February 1st, this property was safety certified with a commitment to safety on February 1. Yeah, keep that slide up with the safety cert.
I'm going to get the bigger one up there.
Yeah, go to the bigger one. So then a month later, the post-stay inspection does not discover that there is a screw loose in one of the chairs and a guest is injured. That really has no bearing on whether or not you'll have protection or not. You know, we were very careful to basically say, look, this is, you call it a marketing badge, if you will. You've committed to safety. You've gone through. You've removed a lot of the big exposure. You're up to speed, but don't think that now you're a target and they're going to come back on you or Breezeway because something happened 3 or 6 months later. At the end of the day, you have insurance, and if you're sued, your insurance either covers it or it doesn't.
That's a great point. You know, this program was developed over several years. I started working with vacation rental safety when an incident happened at a property I managed back in 2013. So this isn't something that's new. What's new is all the work that's gone in to make sure that we're protecting the guests, but also protecting the owners and showing that you've got a commitment to safety. But the bottom line is, what we're doing is we're helping you do what you're supposed to do. And what you're supposed to do is make sure that your rental's safe. And if it's not safe, you're in trouble. And we're now highlighting and making that process a whole lot easier for you and making sure that everything's in good shape so that we can highlight that you've given that commitment to it. And that's going to help you out a lot with your insurance. Hey, Nick, I'm seeing a couple comments in there about one you and I've also talked a lot about. Michael Meir brought up bunk beds. And I know that's a big one over at Proper. I just want to quickly, before I give that one to you, point out in 2007, so 13 years ago, federal law mandated that all bunk beds have to have a railing around the top bunk that allows for 5 inches of railing height above the mattress. And that's to prevent people from falling out, and that the ladder must be affixed. And I will tell you, I could hop on to any listing site right now and probably in 5 minutes find 20 properties with bunk beds that aren't doing that, especially a lot of, as Michael referred to, ones that are custom built ones. And it's just not okay. So what do you got to say about that one from a Proper point of view?
Yeah, when it comes to bunk beds, and to Michael's point, I mean, construction is important. It's a free country, and so whatever bunk beds you want to purchase to put in your vacation rental, we don't really have control over that. We do charge additional liability because we cover the exposure if a kid were to jump off the top of it. There was another question in there about if somebody was maybe overweight and caused it to collapse. Again, the type of construction and the type of bunk bed you're putting into your property, that's something you need to consider as an owner. In my opinion, don't have bunk beds at your property. Go with twin beds in a room and don't stack the beds. You run yourself a lot of liability issues there. But again, if you have a bunk bed, it's responded to under liability. We assess that. Same with loft ladders. Back to the railing stuff. You need to have a permanently fixed ladder to any loft. You need to have applicable guard railing with slats to code so nobody falls off that loft space. So, these are all things that we look at. But again, we can't come in and say, you particular owner, you need to buy this type of bunk bed. From an insurance standpoint, we simply can't do that.
Well, let me jump in real quick too. There's obesity on chairs and some other things. And I like to look at things from a 30,000 foot view. So really, what are we accomplishing here? From an insurance perspective, we always use the word, and it's used in case law a lot. What would a reasonable person do? Okay. So a great example is, let's say you go out onto your deck and you lean up against your railing and you realize it's a little loose. It's not as secure as it was last year. There may be a little bit of wood rot on there, etc. But you decide, you know what, I don't have the money to replace my deck railing this year, and I'm not going to do it. A reasonable person would not do that. A reasonable person would replace the railing on the deck and then prevent this catastrophe from happening. Because again, when a plaintiff is suing you, they're trying to prove negligence. There's also something that's called assumption of risk. So if you have a vacation rental in Alaska, do you have to post a sign that says beware of bears? Do you have to post a sign that says when you walk out of my vacation rental, make sure to look left and look right before you cross the street? And the answer is no, because as humans, we just have an assumption of risk. So if I get onto a bicycle, the case precedent and law that's out there is that people understand what a bicycle is, and they're assuming the risk of getting on that bicycle. But if you go out onto a deck, as a human, what's my risk of going out on a deck? Well, maybe an airplane crashes into the deck. But if I lean against that railing, my assumption is that that is a strong railing. So what this safety certification program is doing, and why we're so excited about it, is it's just a checklist for you to go around and be a reasonable person and say, maybe I should replace those chairs, maybe I should move my grill, maybe I should put the handrail up, I need smoke detectors in all my bedrooms, etc., etc. So that's the core of it, the concept. We're never going to get everything. There's assumption of risk, and you need to act as a reasonable person. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. This certification program speeds that up 10x.
Yeah, and there are some questions on here, and there's a number of them, so just kind of hit them out with. So Justin, you can hit these. Getting certified, how much does it cost? Does it need to be paid for annually? And then just to hit real quick before you answer those, no, you don't have to be a proper insurance customer to do the inspection, but there is specialized pricing for proper insurance customers. And then on top of that, the typical discount that we see in our book of business for using the Breezeway inspection is typically $100 or more in savings on your premium annually. So it definitely pays for itself if you're a current customer of ours and you go through that process.
Yeah, and someone had asked where they go to do it. It's at breezeway.io/proper. I put that up here on the page real quick. And so you want to play around and put that up there again. The certification forget the cost of what it is. It covers you so much further than where you could ever be. Think about your guest safety and the injuries that could happen to your guests. Some of the deaths that we've seen in some of the short-term rentals. I look at that news story that we had earlier that I posted that happened in San Diego. The first death in a short-term rental last year in San Diego. A tree fell on the house. And there was a huge dispute between the owners of the properties where that tree was over whose tree it was, even though they knew it was bad. I don't think they're arguing anymore in person. I'm sure they're all in court. And we would have caught that easily in the safety certification program and helped direct people on what they needed to do. So it's really an important thing to do from all different aspects. I think you answered some of these other questions. Sybil Kim had asked about what type of discount you can see there, so that's great. Darren,
another one here, guys, is
had asked you.
you do not have to be a proper insurance customer to become a Breezeway safety certified property.
Yep.
You get the discount if you are, but that was a question that was on there. So
And
we need to clear that up.
And you do have to do it every year, yes. One of the things that I didn't touch on here, but you'll see in the inspection, we recommend that you actually have a full building inspection. Our safety inspection is covering livability, but it's not covering the construction of your deck, for example. And we firmly believe that as part of the inspection, at least every 5 years, you're having a home inspector come in. If you have a deck, that you're getting your deck fully inspected every 5 years. Decks should be put together with screws and bolts, not nails. And they're going to catch that type of stuff. We'll guide you in that direction. But yeah, it's really important to check every single year and get recertified every year. And the recertification cost is less than the initial cost. So it's just pennies. When you consider, for most of you on here, I know some of the names of some of the rental property owners here, you're getting thousands of dollars a week for your short-term rental, and to focus on safety for less than $60 is a pretty good bargain.
A couple other ones I'll just jump in on. We're getting close to time, but if we want to go over, for those of you who want to drop out, obviously feel free, but if you want to stick around and ask questions, we did decide to stay for a while afterward. As far as the National Forest is concerned, there's a big one here about a fire pit, and yeah, I'd be extremely careful on that, because ultimately you could be found liable for a forest fire. There were some kids in Oregon a couple years ago that had started a fire. The Tennessee fires in Gatlinburg, I don't know how that all ended, but I know it was some kids in the national park that started it. And heaven forbid, I mean, our policy is $1 million per occurrence, but if you had some renters in there and you knowingly just allowed a fire pit in a high fire area and they started a forest fire and 100 people died in a town in Northern California, you just can't do that, because $1 million is not enough coverage. Get rid of it. And then one other thing I wanted to say, because I don't know if I'll have an opportunity while there's still a lot of people on here, is this is the beginning of this process. This will evolve over time, but there's nobody better to do it than Proper Insurance and Breezeway. And consumers, including myself and my family and my wife, I know that logo is pure gold. And I'm a sales and marketing guy myself. That's what I do for a living. But as a vacation rental owner, after this presentation, I want that logo on my property, because I want to get ahead of the game. And this is a competitive industry, and I want a safe vacation rental, because it will help me market my property. So I just wanted to make sure and get that in before everybody drops out.
Yeah, and kind of to touch on that too, looking at the poll that we presented for how safe folks might feel their rentals are, 2% said 1, being they don't think they're safe at all. I would expect, Justin, you're going to be getting some phone calls probably this afternoon. You know, so, you know, there's some work to be done. A lot of these rentals can start, can maybe do some checkups and get a little safer potentially. There was one on here, a question that I'd like to address too. And Todd, I'll get yours answered. I'll have Justin hit that. But questions around docks. And docks are something you want to be concerned about. Yes, people can slip and fall and get hurt. An important thing to note is typical dock injuries would be considered off premises. So you really want to verify on your insurance and make sure you have coverage for that, one. Number two, it would be important to have some type of grippy tape or something like that to prevent slips and falls, as well as some applicable hand railing, especially if it's a higher dock or pier. So those are things that we'd look at ourselves too. We don't require railing on single level docks. Of course, a 2-story dock, you'd want a railing on the top. And like, you know, stay away from diving boards and slides and stuff off your dock. It's just too much of a risk to have that there in a potential liability lawsuit. As far as Todd's question here for you, Justin, the question is, you know, what response would you give to a manager who's afraid that having the safety program in seal may actually open them up to more liability? What if something was missed? A safe home was promised, but nothing happened.
We see that all the time. I have I'll tell you, I'm not going to throw his name out here, but there's a person in this industry right now who is out there as an expert witness against people, property owners, and managers that have accidents in their properties. And he said the exact same thing I'm going to say right now. The second you let a renter into your property, you have assumed that risk. And when these lawyers are working against you in court, we looked at very closely. Some of you may have heard of the Tamarack fire. I truly believe that the Tamarack fire is an industry-changing event for short-term rentals. And you can look it up yourself. It happened in Idaho in 2017. 4 people were killed in a short-term rental because they did not have proper instructions on how to operate the fireplace. There was not a fire extinguisher in the rental. They were using bowls of water running back and forth to try and put the fire out. And when you read the lawsuit in depth, you can see that they cited all international building code standards, which every state in the U.S. has adopted, in bringing that lawsuit against everybody, the property owner, the property manager, the guy who built the fireplace. Everybody was sued in that case. It did end up just settling this past year, but it highlights the fact you've already taken on the risk. So by going to be a professional, which whether you have one home or you're managing 100, you have assumed that risk already. And if you don't know what you're doing with all the safety regulations that are out there and haven't reviewed them, then you're taking on much additional risk as well. And that's what we've done, is we're just stepping in to make that easier for you and say that you've addressed them. And that's what the certification program is about, is we're saving you the hours and hours and hours of what you need to do to figure it all out on your own. And we've just compacted it. And by the way, we're going to reward you for it if you're a proper customer and save you a little bit of money on your premium.
So
There's one on here.
To Alana Schroeder. She had a question. She's always been a huge supporter of proper. Thank you. As far as condo situations, technically when you own a condo, you're responsible for the walls in. So if you own a condo and you're in a complex and there's a community pool, a community fire pit, and a community beach volleyball area, technically that's not your liability. So what you're worried about is your walls in. Where we overlap from an underwriting perspective, a great example would be pool noodles, okay? So let's say you own a condo and there's a pool at the condo association. If someone randomly drowns because of whatever reason, that condo association has their own liability insurance, and that should fall on them. It's not your responsibility to maintain the pool. But if you provide pool noodles at your property and somebody goes to the pool area, the common area, and this noodle encourages them to swim, even though they don't know how to swim because it's a floaty, and they get in there and they drown, could you be tied into that? Potentially, yes, because you provided a pool noodle to someone who didn't know how to swim, and they kind of encourage people to go in the pool that don't know how to swim. So there's kind of a fine line there, but overall, outside your walls, that's not your responsibility.
I'll answer Carla real quick. She's a realtor asking, does someone at Breezeway physically inspect the property? No, and that's, again, what I highlighted earlier in the presentation is it's impossible to get out and physically inspect all these rentals, and the people who are doing it just aren't covering enough of it. So we've designed it as a self-inspection program. Does that mean in your area that there isn't somebody who could come help do that? There is, and we have some different ways, and that's something we're enhancing with the product as we develop it. But right now it's intended to be a self-inspection product. It's done through the app, and you take pictures. You're going to use a smartphone. You're going to use an Android or an Apple phone or an iPad, whatever you've got, and you're going to take pictures of certain things that we ask you to through the app, and we're going to review those things for you. We're also going to look at the listing photos that you've put up and give you feedback. I often catch things that people didn't even think about. I just saw an inspection this morning that came in. They did everything they were supposed to be, and then I noticed there was a high chair over in the corner, and I was like, you want to get the high chair out of there. I actually even looked it up. You can use AI, artificial intelligence, with Google Lens, and I was able to show them that high chair had actually been recalled. It wasn't even a safe high chair to be in any property, let alone that rental property. So using the app is going to guide you through all that.
Super, super important question here. Assuming you do not pass the inspection, will proper insurance be notified? And the answer is no. We will not be notified. We're working in partnership with Breezeway, and we have our own underwriting guidelines. And if you meet our guidelines, you have our insurance. And I think part of the problem in the beginning here is some people have said, well, I don't want to go through this safety program because maybe I have, you know, XYZ and I don't want my insurance canceled. So absolutely not. We are not notified at all if you don't pass the inspection. Okay, so we want you to do it and you should get up to speed, but there is no correlation there.
Somebody's been asking a lot of questions about furniture and the weight of people and whether or not, you know, that's a concern. And it is. You've got to think about that. And you've got to think about, I'm going to answer that question in a little bit broader way. Not just the size, not just the age, but age of your guests. But you just don't know who your guests are at any point in time. There was a fire at a vacation rental in Maine in 2016 that killed 2 people. And it started with 2 children playing with matches. And these kids came from an apartment in Chicago and were vacationing on the coast of Maine. They'd never been exposed to matches before. And wow, they're in a short-term rental, and these are something fun to play with. We just saw some news out in Lake Tahoe where some renters arrived, and within 3 minutes of arrival at the property, the kids found a gun in one of the dresser drawers, and that was because a sheriff had been staying there vacationing the week before and forgot his gun. But that's how quick that happens. The renter even commented that whenever we stay at a rental, my kids are always exploring and poking around and looking at stuff. You've got to be prepared that any renter, size, age, weight, is going to be staying at your property. Now, I'm not talking about someone who might be 600 pounds. That's obviously a little excessive, but you've got to think about the furnishings you're offering. And those plastic resin chairs that come out of China that are $15 a piece, those aren't the kind of chairs you want to put out on the deck for your renters. They lean back in them and they crack and they break. So, yeah, you got to pay attention and think about everyone who could be staying there.
Yeah, and Darren, you can touch on this one too. Waivers of liability, how, granted, we require them, but just touch on that a little bit with waivers not being the end all to your liability issues.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen every liability claim there is essentially, and not all of them are settled. Like, for example, the ambulance chaser one I kind of joked about going, you know, we're not going to write this person a $50,000 check. It's always a good line of defense if a major, I mean, we're talking, think of a death. A death nowadays is pretty much considered $1 million minimum. And if you're being sued, your first line of defense to present is always to let people know, or let the judge know, if you will, that we notified the person. Okay, so it's kind of like, where is the assumption of risk? We're not going to have a waiver of liability for anyone who leaves our home and looks both ways before they cross the street. It's assumption of risk of being a human. However, the bike, it's questionable. Some could argue, hey, I know when I get on a bike it's dangerous, but if I have a waiver of liability that person agrees to, even though nobody reads it, it's buried in the contract, but it says, hey, by accepting this booking, I'm accepting responsibility for the use of the bicycles, and I won't sue. Now, again, they still sue you. We know that. But it's a great defense to say, look, my client tried to do everything reasonably they could to notify people and get them to acknowledge these bicycles. So that's why it's there. There's that gray area. Same with the swimming pool. And the reason we require, you know, a waiver of liability built into the rental agreement that says, look, I'm using the pool at my own risk. It's just a way of defense. But it's not bulletproof. It doesn't get you out of the claim. It just allows us to better represent you when we're dealing with a death suit.
It's exciting to see how many people are still with us and still looking for answers to questions.
Right, I want to hit the, this is fun. This is really fun. All right, I'm jumping in. I know I'm stealing your show here, Massey. He's the manager and he is the man.
No, it's all good. I want to reply to Barbara here about homeowners, some of her homeowners being adamant about including child amenities at the property, even though it sounds like she's suggesting that it's probably not the best idea. I mean, obviously, if that's what they want to do and they're going to furnish the property that way for you to manage, I mean, make sure the cribs and everything are to code and all that stuff. But also for you, Barbara, and any other property managers that are on here, this is where the importance of being listed as additional insured on your homeowner's liability coverage is the utmost importance. And so with that particular owner, if even though you don't like and you think it's a big liability issue, get what's called a certificate of insurance, a COI, that shows the liability coverage and that you as the property manager are listed as additional insured. That's really the best way to do it. Now, another thing that we can all use in our sense here while we're doing business with owners is don't let the 5% take up 99% of your problems. Matt Landau did a great presentation with the VRMA a couple of weeks ago about an owner internationally. I think he said they used to have 90 properties and things became a headache, and he started weeding out some of the bad owners, and now he manages 30 rentals and makes the same amount of revenue that he did with 90. So, you know, you got to take that stuff into consideration when you're going into business with certain homeowners. Just like we don't insure every single homeowner out there because we don't like the risk, the same should go for you as a property manager. And that really could be a barrier to entry for you with taking on a new home, is if the property can't get insured, it's probably not a good property to manage.
Let me jump on a couple real quick. And to Nick's point, though, again, I always look at it from a sales and marketing perspective. That's just how I'm built. So the specific question with the baby stuff, this is a business decision. Again, this is a coffee shop or a grocery store. So you go to the owner and you say, is the risk worth the reward? So how many people have booked our vacation rental exclusively because you offer a crib, a chair, a high chair, a whatever, kid stuff, right? And the answer is probably none, really. I mean, we're talking bedrooms, location. These are the reasons people book vacation rentals. Like myself, I booked a rental in Hawaii last year. I would not have wanted the children's stuff that they provided. You simply contact a professional company in the industry that provides cribs and high chairs and those kinds of things, because it's a separate business. So unless your owner can say, this is a safe high chair, this is a safe crib, this is a safe toy, and all these things, nobody cares. I mean, what I always say is it a checklist in the search items? So go to the owner and say, how are people filtering for your property? They're filtering by location, by bedroom, by price, by amenities. Is children's equipment a checkbox in Airbnb and VRBO? I don't know. I haven't looked lately, but I don't think it is. So get rid of it, because it's opening you up to a huge amount of liability. So, but with that said, what about kayaks at a lake? Okay, maybe that is, now we're talking about a sales and marketing issue where I need to be able to provide kayaks at the lake to book my property to compete against everybody else. We accept kayaks as long as there's life jackets. So there's a fine line. Some stuff you got to have it. I understand you got to have bikes and kayaks. Do you need a high chair? No. Get rid of it.
Darren, can you hit riots and civil commotion? There's a couple of questions in there about it that we haven't touched on yet.
Yeah, so riots and civil commotions is not an exclusion in any insurance. So 3 types of coverage forms: basic, broad, special. Ours is special, which is the best. But even in broad form coverage, which is named perils, property damage as a result of riots or civil commotion is covered. So if you own a coffee shop, there's a protest out front, they destroy and burn down your property, it's got covered insurance loss. So non-issue there, covered. Work comp is a real sticky situation, and that is a separate insurance policy. So work comp is not covered by proper insurance or any other commercial package policy. It is a separate standalone policy. So if you have employees and you have work comp issues, you need to buy your own work comp insurance.
Darren, I was looking at Patricia Moore's question, asking about the mayors reacting to the presentations that you and I gave when we were down in Austin last summer. And I remember asking specifically how many people were aware of safety issues in short-term rentals, and it was surprising how many of them didn't. I remember some of their eyes being kind of glassed over, but the reality is if you Google vacation rental regulations, and I know you guys see this a lot on your end too, it seems like almost every city and town in the United States right now is got some sort of discussion going on related to licensing the short-term rentals in their town or doing inspections in their town. And I don't think it's going to be too long, yes, before we see a lot more of this happen. It took several hotel fires throughout the first part of the 1900s before federal law was enacted. The Hotel Safety Prevention Act had happened in 1982 that required why when you go stay in a hotel, there's sprinkler systems and emergency exits with stairs and all that lighting. And is that going to happen to the short-term rental industry? Probably. Eventually it will. But right now, for those that are still, we still have a lot of people listening on here, and I've seen some people from some advocacy groups. We've seen Nashville Short-Term Advocacy Group. We saw one here from Annapolis, Maryland. And one of the great things that we're already working with some advocacy groups on Nashville is certainly one of the big ones. And getting your members involved in having their properties be certified as safe and showing that to your community is going to put you much further ahead when it comes to these regulations coming. Because when they ask, what's going on here? Why are we seeing accidents in these rentals? And you can say, hang on a minute. We've got a group of homeowners who have committed to safety, and 70 of them have already gone through the certification program and are certified, just like the Nashville group has. That's powerful stuff, and it helps pull the rest of everybody on because it's one bad apple that spoils a bunch. And it just takes one accident in your town, and that's what we're seeing, with the carbon monoxide incident. 25 people inside of a home that only allowed 10, and all of them are in the hospital. 2 of them with major complications because of carbon monoxide poisoning. And what's that town doing now? If you look in their town, almost every Newsweek article is talking about the fact that they're putting regulations in effect as a result of it. And that could have been prevented if things were already being addressed in that town. So, there's a lot to be addressed, and it's going to happen eventually that you're going to be required to do it, and we're getting you ahead of it first.
Yeah, Justin, good question here too from Lee Thompson, and I'll chime in. But talking about personal flotation device, such as life jackets provided to guests on a lake house with canoes, kayaks, etc., knowing if they'll fit. First and foremost, any type of flotation device that you're providing at your rental should follow the Coast Guard certifications that are set out there. You go to the boating store, you go to a Walmart, you go to a Target, whatever, where they sell life jackets, they're going to have that stamp of certification on it. Number 2, from my standpoint, it would be recommended that you buy a couple in each size. Back to the obesity question, you just don't know who's coming out there. So, infant, toddler, small, medium, large, maybe extra large, get a couple of them. Life jackets are not terribly expensive, and just have those at their property. And just to tie that into an insurance thing for you, Lee, if a guest or a group of guests were to steal your life jackets, or not wear the life jackets, that would be a better example. If they do not wear the life jackets and they come after you in a liability lawsuit, again, at least on our product, you would have liability response, even if the guest is trying to sue you for them not wearing a life jacket.
Yeah, the life jackets are a big one. I also get into, and I speak personally from an incident that happened when I was a property manager. We had, the kayaks today are all made out of this plastic material, and you got to check those after each rental or have them in place. We had a situation where one had worn all the way through because the renters were dragging it over the rocks every week, back and forth, back and forth. These things, these amenities you provide, they're getting used more than when you're there. I often hear homeowners say, well, I'm going to leave the kayaks out for the renters to use. Well, the homeowner may only ever use the kayaks 2 or 3 times a year, if at all. These renters are using them every day, every week. They're getting a lot of use. And so when you're providing the life jackets, you got to check those off over every week. Maybe add that to your house cleaner's checklist that they're quickly checking to make sure that the life jackets are all still there. They don't have a tear or rip in them. But also looking at the kayak, and this situation I had been dragged over the rocks, and it actually developed a leak in it. And fortunately, we caught that before it became a major incident. That very same year that happened, 2 people drowned in kayaks in Michigan from the exact same thing, where kayaks were provided by at a short-term rental, and they went out. The water was really cold, and one of the kayaks took on water with a 15-year-old son. The dad drowned trying to save his son, and then his son got hypothermia and eventually drowned as well. So you got to look at the stuff every single week. Bikes, high chairs, any of these amenities you're providing in there for the renters to use, make sure someone's putting a set of eyes on them every week between renters.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. Thanks, guys. I'm going to hit 2 here. Pam Odell apparently wants Justin and Nick to be a guest for their members. So I'm wondering, Pam, why I wasn't included on that, but apparently it's just Justin and Nick. So contractor gets on the ladder. I need to make sure he has insurance or company has work comp. 100,000,000% correct. So the classic example is the kid who mows your lawn, right? Let's say there's a neighborhood kid and you go, I'll give you 20 bucks. You mow my lawn every week. He gets injured. His family comes back and sues you. That person, that kid could easily be considered an employee. Every state is different, 10 hours a week, 5 hours a week, once a month, and it just gets super messy. And that's why work comp is excluded from all commercial package policies like we sell. It's a separate thing. So a roofer, number 1 on that, you hire Lawn Mowers Incorporated, a professional outfit that has their own insurance to mow your lawn every week. They'll have the neighborhood kid do it. And to your point with the gentleman on the ladder, I mean, it's going to be probably pretty hard for them to try and file a work comp claim against you, because how can it be, defined that this worker was an employee of yours? But it gets super sticky and super messy. And so exactly as you said, when you have a contractor come to your house, you say, I like your bid, show me your E&O, or excuse me, show me your work comp insurance, that you're licensed and insured. That's why that marketing has been around forever. You see John's Plumbing, licensed and insured. Joey's Roofing, licensed and insured. The reason they market that is because consumers like yourself who are educated want to make sure there's insurance in place before they go on your roof. So excellent question.
Pam just likes us more, Darren. That's all. No hard feelings.
I like
Yeah.
Puerto Rico, Darren. I saw that.
What's that?
Someone on there invited you to come down and help them out in Puerto Rico. They didn't invite Nick.
Yeah, and the thing with the outside the U.S. is it is a natural extension to go into Canada, Mexico, and then the Caribbean. But the thing is, and I've learned this in business, as you guys probably know, who's still on here as well, don't spread yourself too thin. Focus on what you do well. And we're 5 years in. We've got an incredible company and staff, but we're just not there yet. I will tell you, 10 years in, we probably will have a bit of saturation in the U.S. and we'll look to go international. But it's just something we're not willing to commit resources to now, when we still have so much market share to get in the United States. There was another one that was really good on here. What was it? Riots and civil commotion, as far as liability is concerned, is a big deal, you guys. So someone down here had asked, should we address rioting and civil commotion? And the answer is yes, 100%. And this goes way back to the beginning of our product. So a lot of our competitors have, including the Airbnb host protection policy, the free insurance for everybody, there's an exclusion for assault and battery. And people have always kind of wondered, like, why is that such a big deal? Why do all these insurance carriers exclude A and B, right? Nobody wants to cover it. We do not have an exclusion, just to throw that out there. And the reason is muggings, okay? All these insurance carriers are so scared about big liability claims involving muggings. So great example. You book an Airbnb in a certain section of Baltimore. I'm not putting down Baltimore. I know there's crime there. It is what it is. You book a vacation rental, you go to dinner with your family, and you get mugged. And it's a serious issue. You can come back and sue the owner, 100%. Again, we're talking about assumption of risk, remember? So me as a guest, I looked at the online listing and these beautiful photos and this great rental and these reviews. I didn't really think there was an issue about walking to dinner and getting mugged, right? I wasn't notified. So it's a real sticky issue where should the owner put in the listing that there's been a recent crime spree, and you got to watch out walking around this neighborhood because it's a bad neighborhood. Okay, that's a legitimate thing. That's why assault and battery is excluded from most all insurance, because people can come back on you. So if you're a vacation rental owner or manager in an area where there is riots and civil commotion and things going on, 1,000,000% in the communication you have with the owner, you need to notify them that there's something happening in the area. Okay, that's a big deal.
My friend Elizabeth Sickles had asked about carpets, and that falls under slips and falls. Over 80% of all accidents in short-term rentals are from slips and falls. So, yeah, you want to think about what you put out. I notice a lot of professional managers will leave throw towels that they hang over the shower door, hang over the tub. They intentionally don't put those down so that when the renters arrive, they're not going to slip on them. They do have a lot of the carpets out there that have that rubber grip underneath them that kind of go around the base of a toilet or in front of a vanity. I'm not a huge fan of those. I think it's a good idea to let the renters put stuff down when they arrive there and let them kind of set the space based on how they're going to use it. And if you set that up as a procedure that you do on a consistent basis, that'll keep you out of trouble when it comes to that.
Good, great question on here. I know I keep stealing these questions, but this is a really good one. I don't know if Penny Shea is still on here, but she asks, we cannot know what people are allergic to, so how can we be safe with doing it, not putting ourselves out there, etc.? Well, so this is an interesting one, and part of what everyone needs to understand too is this is why you buy insurance. I mean, we pay a lot of claims and there's only so much you can do, but one thing that's very unique about the proper insurance policy is the fact that we do not have a communicable disease exclusion. All of our competitors have a flat exclusion that says any liability claim involving a communicable disease is not covered. Period. End of story. Now, the COVID-19 is considered a virus. A virus is considered a communicable disease. So there's no coverage anywhere. We, on the other hand, only have an exclusion for viruses, which is COVID-19 essentially. So bacteria and other things that people can get as a result of using your shower or your hot tub is not excluded from our insurance policy, which is a huge deal because we've actually had to represent people who, I had a friend actually, she's not on here, but she sent me a text. I'm not that close with all of our insurers, but she's a big supporter of the program from day one. She sent me a text of a message she got from a renter who had this terrible rash after staying in her vacation rental property. And she was very scared she was going to be sued and bacteria, infection, etc. And I coached her through that, and that story's for another day. But their only exclusion on our policy is for something that's particular virus. Super important to know. What else do we have here, Nick?
Well, I'm not seeing any more questions. Really coming in. I think it's a good time to probably wrap it up. Thank everybody for attending. This is recorded. It's going to be sent out to all the attendees. Share it with your friends who couldn't make it today. But outside of that, we really appreciate everybody attending. Our peak attendance was 218 people at one point in time, which is amazing considering we typically see an attendance of like anywhere between 20 and 100. So it's really great to see everybody getting involved here. Outside of that, we look forward to future conversations with everybody. Reach out to Breezeway, reach out to Proper Insurance, and we're happy to chat with everybody.
Thank you very much. I'm easy to get in touch with. I know it's proper.insure. If you want to go to the website there to find Nick and Darren, and I'm over at breezeway.io.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining, everybody, and just build a relationship. I mean, before the beginning of this, we were kind of like, what's our big takeaway? And we just want you to know us and for us to know you. So pick up the phone, send an email, start a relationship if it's not there already, and go economy, reopen, positive energy.
Cool.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. We'll be shutting it down. Have a good one.